You say the stories about Luthor Harkon contradict each other. That the legends make impossible claims, and that the records must be later forgeries. You complain that it is impossible to know the truth about the Lord of the Vampire Coast. I say that is a blessing, for behind truth, there often lies madness.
Fortune favors the infamous.
Now look, I don't have a lot of experience with the Vampire Coast. Me, being the high elf boy that I am, mostly describe them with two words: fucking annoying. But, I mean, undead pirate vampires? Or vampirates? It can't not be good, right? So here is the hero of our story, Luthor Harkon. Pirate King of the Vampire Coast, and mental ward patient. Which, I mean, was pretty obvious from the get-go, because this is totally how a sane person stands around. Anywho, the campaign started the way any pirate story should start, by brutally murdering mutineers. Now, I'll be honest, I was just gonna auto-resolve this, but close victory, and we lose a unit? You stupid computer, I thought to myself. I can do much better than that. But then once we actually got into battle, I realized that the unit I was gonna lose was pretty intent on not coming back because it was a walking kamikaze. But hey, look at that. Decisive victory. I mean, we did have mortars and like 300 more zombies than them, but still, like, we take those. I quickly moved in and took the province from these mutinous dogs, but oh well, look at that. They left the settlement. They came at us again, and we killed them all. But surprise, surprise, the vampiric zombies resurrected.
Bloody pirates!
They were gone soon enough though, and with a province secured, our pirate adventure could finally begin. Then on turn 5, we got the official order to restore Harkon's mind, and then was immediately reminded of why. You see, every few turns, Harkon's personality changes, which is...
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
And like 2 seconds after this, these two scaly gentlemen declared war on me. Amazing. I wonder how my soft, drenched, brainless zombies will do against huge fucking armored dinosaurs. But, I mean, that was why we were in Lustria, because to cure Harkon's mind, we needed Slan gold, which we of course planned on stealing from said dinosaurs. Now looking around, I also saw that we had this infamy list, where all the goodest and bestest pirates are ranked. And naturally, we were, well, at the bottom. But who doesn't love a good underdog story? So I set myself the additional goal of truly becoming the Pirate King by topping the list. I recruited some more deckhands, got another set of mortars, and was off to barbecue some lizards. On my way there though, I realized that I was also neighboring this other dinosaur, Uaxti, who naturally also hates my bloody, watery guts, and call me crazy, cause, well, I am, but it was also only a matter of time before this future tank of gas also declared war on me. So I put my fractured mind to use, and realized that I had some rat boys to my south, who were already at war with this guy. So being the genius schizophrenic that I am, I helped the rats out, purely out of the kindness of my heart and money. But mostly I figured this was a good way to properly test out my army. So another war was declared. With the rat garrison reinforcing me, we went into battle. Our first real one. We were up against a lot of lizards in this one, so I was extremely grateful that I had recruited more gunmen and another set of mortars, because god damn, these things put in work. The dinosaurs came running towards me from out of their jungles, right into not so accurate gunfire, bombs, and raining mortar shells. We also had Mason Bryan, my hero Gunnery White, and he had to draw his sword and step into melee because there were just so many fucking dinosaurs and skinks. Harkon himself was fighting bravely, here standing seemingly unfazed in the midst of battle while his zombies were being torn to pieces. But after a lot of bullets, blood, and black powder, we managed to push him away. And just as victory was in our grasp, guess who showed up? Skaven slave slingers and some clan rats. Yay. They showed, okay, I'll give them that. Victory was ours, although slightly Pyrrhic. We replenished our army, and also recruited a second lord to keep watch over our capital, Anne Floda. We were rewarded for our efforts in battle with a fleshy fortune, a free hero, and since I already had a gunnery wight, I went for the Morngul Haunter, Johnny Coughlin. Soon enough, Uoxty's last settlement fell, and what was left of his, well, puny faction was slowly rotting away in my lands. Thank you, corruption. Though my terrain was doing most of my work for me, I did chase them down and put my guns to their cold-blooded heads. And this pleased the gods of war, and I'd now unlocked the rite of the curse of the Queen's Cannon, which allowed me to recruit the crown jewel of my army, and I'll be honest, the whole campaign. Queen Bess. Now look, okay, I like me a woman who can stand her ground, and oh boy, Big Bess can kick. So with this thick chick in my command, I now had a full stacked army. Pole arms for some anti-large, bombers, gunnery mobs, deck droppers, and my beloved mortars. Well, and some zombie pirate mobs whose sole job was to stand right next to my oncoming enemies while my artillery pummeled them to pieces. I was ready to take on the lizard men. However, I had been oblivious to the fact that Skulltaker was like right next to me, and he had, alongside my friendly neighborhood rats, mostly dealt with the reptiles. And I'm not gonna lie, I was kinda thankful for that. I had more important things on my mind, like fixing it, and I noticed some future loyal zombie deckhands to my north, Bretonians, and more specifically, Alberic. We now also had the Slan Gold in sight, which was the first piece of the puzzle to a clear mind. Anne Floda was keeping herself busy being what I would say is an exemplary pirate, while Luthor marched for war. Slaughter was finally in our grasp, and we went into our first battle, up against Florence Paquette. Now they outnumbered us, and huge shock, they had like 1,000,000 horses. But that's nothing a bit of sweat and black gunpowder can't fix. I set up my position on the hillside while the Bretonians advanced in a giant fucking line which pretty much stretched across the whole map. Did I mention that they brought a lot of horses? And the silence before the storm was broken by the thunderous roar of Queen Bess, turning Frenchmen into clouds of bloody mist. I'll give it to them though, they did manage to flank us. But again, they brought like 1,000,000 horses. Thankfully, my zombies were too brain dead to actually understand that they were being flanked, so we just stood our ground, which helped me protect my artillery pieces. Seeing his fellow undeads being flung across the map made Johnny Coughlin upset, so he went on a eating spree of the Bretonians. It took us a while to kill off the horsemen, but as the knights fled, the peasants and archers soon followed, and the battle was won. Which also meant we had another settlement. Very epic. And yet another settlement later, we marched on their final one in the region and was met with a full stack, plus a hefty garrison. And you would not believe the smile on my face when I saw that they had practically no horses, probably because we killed them all, and it was a choke point battle. I mean, that's like a mortar's wet dream. This battle was fought solely on this crossing. And while the Bretonians awaited their reinforcements, we set up position. My mortars and Queen Bess way in the back, my polearms ready on the river to, well, skewer any Frenchman willing to make the crossing, and a nice semicircle of, well, neither well-equipped or accurate zombie gunnery mobs. But we had a lot of them, and plenty of bullets. Also, depending on Harkon's current personality, he sometimes had access to spells from the Law of the Deep. And thankfully for me, he currently had access to the Vargheist's Revenge. And well, they all tried to cross the river, basically just forming huge blobs. Need I say more? But nevertheless, it was truly a sight for zombie eyes, and using the Vargheist's Revenge spell on this huge thick, juicy line of Bretonnians was nothing short of bliss. This battle was pretty much just Alberic throwing everything he had left at us, and as that failed miserably, he simply ceased to exist. So now I was feeling confident. We had a sizable chunk of land under our control, and I felt ready to take the first step towards mind restoration. And once again, we were up against lizards. They were protecting their gold well, and I think we were like kinda supposed to charge at them and take the hill that held their gold. But again, huge armored dinosaurs, wet, brainless zombies. So I figured I had a much better chance just blasting the scales of them from afar. And obviously they weren't just gonna stand there and take it, so they came charging towards me, but yet again, I used the terrain to my favor, and they got either filled with bullets or turned into blood fountains, courtesy of my lovely lady. And, well, their reinforcements got the exact same treatment, giving me the heroic victory. With the quest battle done and Alberic deep underwater, I moved on to the next victim of my bloodthirst, Marcus Wolfheart. Now, this war against Wolfheart was definitely a tougher fight. We went back and forth for a while, and we won some, and we lost some. But it all culminated in this battle here. Now, let me ask you this. What's scarier than an insane undead vampire pirate? An insane undead vampire pirate on a huge zombified bat. Now, at first, we were just up against a general and 2 other units, with Marcus reinforcing and a 3rd army reinforcing. So I sent Luthor up to deal with army number 1, while 2 and 3 were still on their way. I set up in a beautiful position, ready to gun them down the second they entered the battlefield. All the while, Johnny Cacklin and my newfound regiment of renown, the Gallows Giant, held the front line. And, well, once again, this was a crazy slaughter of men. The Empire Boys were immediately halted by Johnny and the Gallows Giant, before being exploded and or shot to oblivion. I'd now also gotten 1 unit of better guns, the Deck Gunners, which I fell completely in love with. Marcus was dead, and with him, the Huntsman's expedition. So at this point, I was on pretty good terms with most of Lustria. Skulltaker liked me, and I was in a defensive alliance, for some reason, with my rat neighbors, and Rakarth, who I had a very healthy relationship and trade agreement with, had been wiping the West Coast clean. So it was just me and the other bad guys chilling. However, 1 man remained. Or shall I say dragon, the final bastion of hope, a light in the darkness, which I would crush. It was Uambo. We were pretty damaged going into this fight. Johnny Cockling was pretty beat up, and the Gallows Giant was like 1 hit away from disintegrating. However, there was a very conveniently placed rock to place my cannons, mortars, and Queen Bess on, as well as to form gun lines around. Some unsuspecting Jade Lancers were a little nosy, and were quickly ambushed by Johnny before being pelted with bombs. Luthor flew around harassing them where he could, and my cannons softened up their Jade Lions before they could reach my infantry. Johnny definitely saved us in this battle though, pinning down enemies and mostly keeping them at bay. And eventually, thankfully, we won. So with Cathaeans gutted like fish, they had 1 settlement left, which Rakarth had his eye on, so I just left that alone. And in all of this fighting, the fattest of all toads had declared war on me as well. Probably because I was turning all of lush green Lustria into undead purple lands. I did have a plan for this though, because I was kind of bored of fighting for land. Because this is a pirate campaign after all. I'll admit, I'd had my fun blowing humans to smithereens, but I yearned for the seas. Also, my economy was pretty awful looking, so I figured actual piracy in a pirate campaign would help. So, to please Mazdamundi, I gave him the settlements I just brutally stolen and plundered from Yuan Bo in exchange for peace. With Lustria conquered and secured, Slan gold in my pocket, all I needed was money. Because to fully restore Harkon's mind, we needed to build a building in our starting capital, which cost a lot of money, and also was only available after the settlement was at level 5, which also costs a lot of money. And in addition to this, Luthor's army is also a walking pirate ship, which needs a lot of money to fully upgrade. Plus we're pirates. So, to the seas we went. Now, Harkon the Black was right across the pond from us, and had literally been pestering me for military access since like turn 2. So I figured maybe he was in trouble. Which meant I was headed for the desert. This was a good decision, because Riponce was there. And she had a lot of juicy settlements to take. We raised one, just to let her know we were there, before immediately spending the money to upgrade our ship. Then we moved inland, only to be attacked by the horse lady herself. Now, in addition to being at war with Harkon, she was also under heavy assault by Ikit Claw for some reason. So although we ended up taking pretty much all her settlements, we only faced her once. And that once was this. And this battle was, well, beautiful. And lo and behold, a choke point battle. We kicked the battle off with an epic airborne duel between Luthor and some knight on a Pegasus. But when the reinforcements came in, they had brought trebuchets, which started smashing my poor zombies like bugs. Thankfully, the Pegasus knight was dead by then, so Luthor was free to go and take care of them. While the trebuchets were being dismantled, I cast the most beautiful spell in this entire campaign. The Bretonnians were all lined up, waiting to go on the offensive, so I cast the Vargheist's Revenge, which destroyed 3 full units. And look, I'll admit, I might be a little bit liberal with the use of the word destroyed when I play this game, but in this case, they were actually destroyed, like gone, as in 0 survivors. Honestly, I wish I could frame this sequence in my living room. Borderline erotic spells aside, they eventually launched their assault, which made Queen Bess very happy, and we got to demolish even more Bretonnians. The knights did do a fair bit of damage to us though, but not for long, because the insane casualties they suffered on the way down the sand dunes caused them to give up pretty quickly, giving us another heroic victory. After this, I spent a few turns relaxing in the desert heat, raising settlements and upgrading my ship, which meant that I could eventually get the Depth Guard, which I tested out on the garrison of their most valuable settlement, Al-Haik, which went very well. Though my Depth Guard took a bit of a beating, but we raised Al-Haik for a juicy 25k, which was plenty to upgrade both Luthor's ship and the main capital to max level. Piracy was indeed starting to pay off. We could now also recruit the deck gunners straight from the ship, which were a massive upgrade to my gunnery mobs. I also tested them out on another garrison, which went very well. Now I did take some of Riponce's settlements and gave them to my old skeleton pal Harkon, because he was in desperate need of help. Mostly though, I figured that if he got back on his feet, my trade agreement with him would increase in value, so also money. And I didn't really want any settlements out in the desert, so win-win. I was feeling very confident now with depth guards, deck gunners, and a level 50 Luthor, which is when I saw like 9 million skeletons guarding this pyramid. So I figured that would be a good fight. I'd now also gotten yet another very cool unit that I was very excited to try out, a giant crustacean. Actually, make that 2 giant crustaceans. So we basically just plowed through them instantly. I did actually want this settlement though, because of the special building, the Vault of Nagash, which not only is pretty profitable, but also gives all armies 10% spell resistance and extra winds of magic reserve. And with that, I'd grown tired of the sands, and once again yearned for the seas. And although we'd made a fair bit of money and had began constructing the last buildings needed for Harkon's mind, we still had lots of settlements needing upgrades and captains in need of pay. So I set sail for a place I knew would be stacked, Ulthuan. As per usual, the High Elves were at war with the Druki, and Noctilus was probably fucking around here somewhere, which gave me the opportunity to sneak in and lay siege on Tor Ivres. We'd now also finally restored Harkon's mind, which not only meant mission accomplished, but also meant that he had access to all spells from Lore of the Deep, meaning free reign on krakens and ghost ships. And boy, what a siege. I must admit though that it hurt my elven heart to do this to the best race in the game, only a very close second to their cousins in the woods. Anyway, Tor Ivres fell and my pockets grew much bigger. We took a few more settlements, and by took, I obviously mean razed and pocketed anything valuable. And we were now at 4th place on the epic pirate list, so we were getting closer, but we still had more to go. So let's go become Stuff of Legend. So, as you probably saw, I did kind of pick up the Sword of Cain. As per usual, I could not resist. And we were now finally at the top of the list. We did have one more battle left though, for the final sea shanty. I'll be honest, I didn't really pay too much attention to these sea shanties. I was kind of busy with everything else. So I just kind of took them out as they appeared. As I was chasing the final pirate down, they attacked me, alongside a band of elves. We took out most of the elves before the battle began, courtesy of Harkon and the Sword of Cain. But by the time the pirates came in, half the elves were dead. They advanced on us, they had monsters, archers, horses, and magic. But our army had fought our way through scorching deserts, plundered lizards, terrorized the lands of men, and braved the seas. So a few undead monsters and low-level elves hit us like water against rock. And that secured the last sea shanty. We were now truly a pirate of legend. So with Harkon's mind restored, half the world wanting to kill us, Lustria conquered, and our hull filled to the brim with treasures, I'd say this was a pretty successful campaign. And whoever said dead men tell no tales, obviously never met Luthor Harkon.